Super Bowl. Where did this name come from? And why do so many people watch it for just a few hours during the day? As a sports fan myself, I do enjoy watching this game and seeing the teams who proved to be the best in their conference at the time go against each other and try and prove that they are the best team in the NFL. But a lot of people wonder or know is is the Super Bowl has the Super Bowl always been called the Super Bowl? Did it have another name to it? And also, where did the name Super Bowl come from? Who thought of it? Who invented the name? And it then later on became the name of the big game. Was the Super Bowl when they first started as popular as it is now? Is popularity the same, or did not as many people watch it? And also, is there still live footage of the very first game that they played and called the Super Bowl? Well, the first thing that they did was the Super Bowl was not always called the Super Bowl. It originally was called the AFL versus NFL Championship Game. And the reason why it was called this was because at the time there were two football leagues at the time. The National Football League and the American Football League, which was made by two guys who were trying to buy an NFL team but were denied, so they made their own league. And they kind of did what the NFL did, was they had their league do a season and the playoffs to prove which team of their league was the best. And these leagues were rivals up until 1970 when they decided to merge. And so what they did with the the team that proved that they were the best in their league, they had them go up against each other to try and see which team was the best out of both leagues. And in January of 1967, the first Super Bowl started. However, whenever they did this, they did not call it the Super Bowl. But the Green Bay Packers, who represented the NFL at the time, went up against the Kansas City Chiefs, who were the best team in the American Football League. And they were hoping to come out on top and prove that the American Football League was the best league at the time. However, the NFL had control of the game the whole time and ended up defeating the AFL by a score of 35-10 and proved that their team and their league was the best out of both of the leagues. And some people, one that don't know, is roughly around 60 million people watched this game televised on the two networks at the time. And about 62,000 people watched this game live at the Memorial Coliseum where the game was being held. But, unlike the Super Bowls now where there's hardly any empty seats, 32,000 seats were emptied or unoccupied by a fan in the stadium. And the stadium, or the Coliseum, was barely over halfway full. And this was all according to History.com. And next is, where the Super Bowl term or name came from? Who thought of it? The person who first thought of this or came up with it was he went by the name Lamar Hunt, who actually was the owner of the Kansas City Chiefs at the time in the American Football League. And he thought of this term because of the term bowl was being used in college football at the time, and then also over his child's toy called a Super Bowl. So then he combined the name Super and Bowl and made the name Super Bowl. However, the name wasn't used for the big game at the time until the press and the media was saying that the name AFL versus NFL Championship Game was too long to put in the papers or to get out to the media, and it was too much of a mouthful to say, and they wanted a shorter name. And so the media ended up using this term first whenever they set it out into their papers or into the ways of communication they were able to use. The league ended up changing the name to Super Bowl after seeing that the media and the press would not use the name they had set, AFL versus NFL Championship game. So they decided to change the name after the 1968 football season. And this was all according to dictionary.com. And the popularity from now to the Super Bowl back then was not as high as some people think. Only about 24 million people watched the game. The average viewers were about 24.4 million people, which compared to the average viewers now is substantially lower, or substantially low from the first Super Bowl. The average viewers now is much higher than the ones now. And the ratings compared to Super Bowls now, which are really good, back then they were at, which are still a Super Bowl history low at only 18.5. And this was all according to sports media. And at the time back then, 2 networks were able to air the Super Bowl instead of 1. The 2 networks that were able to do it were NBC and CBS, the networks that we are all familiar with. But, however, they didn't let everybody watch this. They only allowed a certain amount of people watch the game, and certain people were not allowed to watch the game for an unknown reason. But the footage that's still available, CBS actually still has somewhere where they have stored it. However, the footage from the NBC that they recorded of the game is no longer, unfortunately, in existence and cannot be retrieved no longer. However, the CBS footage still has bits and pieces that are missing, so it doesn't have the full game. And so, the things that we have said in here are what the name of the Super Bowl was and who also thought of it, and where the name came from and why it was called Super Bowl all the way up until now and forever. And also how the popularity the first Super Bowl had compared to the ones now. And so I hope that your knowledge of the Super Bowl has grown from learning all of this knowledge, and that I hope also you see, even if you don't like sports, why the Super Bowl is such a popular game and why so many people look forward to seeing this game in February and why so many people tune into it. Thank you.